Well, another one of the major issues here, that gets a lot of press all the time is, of course, the border security.
Yes.
And as a senator, you see John McCain down there with, a couple of the big sheriffs in the southern part of the state, and they're saying that John's got the right plan and all of this type of stuff. What's Ian Gilyeat's plan?
It's a very, very simple plan. We have a national security risk, and if we want a secure border, which I do, then we must deploy military presence. There's no other way to secure that border. This comes from a...
You mean more than the 542 that are already down there? Or
yes.
Or whatever the number is right
that's
now?
Correct.
I think maybe it's 218 here and the rest went to Texas, I'm not sure. But so you want more than just a few hundred, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm saying that we have an opportunity when we bring our soldiers home from Iraq or Afghanistan or other places that we can put them along the border to secure it in very short order. Mm-hmm. And that's really the only way to secure that border. A fence can be helpful in slowing people down, but it's not going to solve the problem.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember a lot of those places are inaccessible by anybody but an illegal immigrant. That's nobody wants to be out there, and the scorpions and the cactus and the rattlesnakes and everything else. So
understand, but and I don't know if I mentioned this previously, but I lived in Berlin in the early '80s, and it was a walled city. It was occupied by the Allies, and the only way that border was secure because there was a double wall, a no man's land, but in reality it was a military presence. That's what kept people from
the center of this. You mean there was one wall that was the Berlin Wall west, and there was one wall that was the Berlin Wall east?
No, Berlin was an island city in the middle of communist Germany, in East Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a wall that circled the entire city, and when you wanted to go to the west, you drove through those checkpoints and drove through East Germany in order to drive to the west.
Wow. And how long were you there for?
I lived in that city for 6 months.
Is that right?
And I drove back and forth to the west on a monthly basis, so I made a dozen plus trips across that border.
And how was that?
It was intimidating.
But there wasn't any riffraff, there wasn't any hanky-panky. Those guys will shoot you if you look at them wrong.
Well, it was a controlled environment.
Yeah.
And I believe we are a nation of immigrants. I want immigration to work for us. We need immigrants to come into the country to continue to fuel the economy. They bring a rich heritage, all of those very positive things.
Yeah.
But it needs to occur legally.
Yeah. What about the ones that are already here?
Well, I'm in favor of a guest worker program, so I want all of them to identify themselves and start to pay into the system. Anybody who doesn't, we go find them and we deport them.
Yeah.
Anybody that wants citizenship, and this is an important point, when I speak of a guest worker program, it does not lead to citizenship. If you want citizenship, you leave the country and you come back in through legal means and processes.
You through their legal means and processes before you get to ours. And
yes.
A lot of those countries are.
That's
well,
correct.
When I was a kid, I picked grapes, I picked watermelons, I did tomatoes. When we go down and tomatoes on the big conveyor belt. That was hard work.
It was. I picked strawberries, and then I worked on the plantation.
I never did strawberries, but I guarantee you that nowadays, whenever I go by one of those fields, and I think about how hard I worked when I was a kid. I was raised on a dairy farm, so that's what I did for my money, is went over and worked on a peach orchard or, a tomato farm or whatever it might have been, walnut, whatever it might have been. I don't see a lot of Americans wanting to be out there doing those hard, dirty jobs.
I think Americans are willing to work those kinds of jobs. I was happy to do it.
When we were kids,
yes,
we were happy to do it.
Sure.
We didn't have the entitlement then. It wasn't as big of a deal then. It was work for your living, earn your living.
Yeah, but what happens when we cut the entitlements out?
I don't know, because I've never had any. I've never felt I was entitled to anything but work hard and enjoy my life. So.
Yeah, but think about the educational process. When we give our youth too much easy money from the government in terms of entitled education, post-secondary education, what's their incentive to go work out in the field and save so they can go to college and get a better education?
There isn't much, is there?
No, there's not.
Yeah.
So when we take education dollars and slam that into a military bill, and then we start to push those dollars out to our students, our young people, and entice them to go to post-secondary for trades and for university, etc. What's their incentive to work, to earn their way?
Yeah.
There isn't any, because it's provided by the government. And when we say that, we have to remember it's provided by somebody's neighbor because the money was taken out of their pocket so that that person could go to school on their dime, on their back.
Yeah. Well, and you know, it's like in any society, whether it be Hispanic, Afro-American, Caucasian, whatever it might be, there is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful beings, and there is scallywags.
There is, but
And you know, you can't pick anyone and say, well, we're going to shut this down. I don't know what they're doing in Canada right now, but I've been upset with a few Canucks in my life too, you know. So, I mean, I'm just saying that, you know, I mean, you can't isolate the entire borderline of the United States of America because you don't like the French in Quebec, or
right.
you know, I mean, that's this is the focus. Down here is the focus.
Yes.
But there's still riffraff and hanky-panky going on the north, you know.
There is, absolutely. And I'm not an isolationist. I believe we need to be productive and involved in the global community. We need to trade. We need to do those kinds of things. But we need to be smart in how we do it. And when people want to come into the country, they come in through a legal means, legal process.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, though, but the ones before this became a major issue when you and I were children, and they were up here since you and I were children, and we're not spring chickens anymore.
Right.
And they have been working their entire life, and they have been paying taxes, and their kids went into the services and stuff, and they just never ever thought that they would have to do this. What about those people? What about those good, hard-working families that we have up here in that mix of people that are detrimental?
I'm not understanding the question. Reframe it for me.
You know, 30 years ago, immigration wasn't a big deal. Border security meant nothing. Everybody was kind of more of a free, footloose, fancy.
Are you speaking of illegals again?
Well, back then, they didn't really consider themselves illegals because they were kind of condoned by the big ranchers and the big people to come up and work on the ranches and go back.
Yeah, okay.
But they've been here all that time, and they never got citizenship. And then there was a grant of amnesty, and then there was this, and then there was that, and they missed every one of them.
Okay.
But they still paid their taxes. They still sent their kids to war. They still defended our country. What about those people? What do you feel about those people?
It'll sound cold, but the answer is the same for me. You leave the country and you come back in through legal means.
Mm-hmm.
There's bias in this, and I recognize that. I was a seasonal laborer. I left my home and my family for up to 6 months at a time. I labored with other people that came in from the Philippines up to 6 and 9 months at a time. They left, and then they would go back home after they worked.
After the 6 months.
After the 6 months, I left home and did a missionary service in Germany for 2 years. I left my family. It's okay to leave your family for a time and come back in so that you can be legal, so that you can obtain citizenship. I place value on citizenship. If you want it, you come in through legal means.
If it means something to you.
If it means something to it.
Do it, even though
the right way.
bureaucratic BS goes on forever.
Yeah.
Take the time to do it right.
Yes.
Okay.
I think there's value in that.
There is.
And
You earn it. You
yes.
earn it. You get it because you earned it. Not because you stole it, not because you bought it, but because you earned it.
And even if you've labored here for 20 years, does that mean that you're entitled to citizenship?
If you weren't a citizen in the beginning?
If you weren't a citizen to start with. Or does it mean that you should come through legal means and a legal process and obtain citizenship and pay due respect to the law of the land that you want to live in, that you want to swear allegiance to?
Yeah, yeah. Makes a lot of sense.